if you guys already know this, but a great way to ruin that thing you like is to see other people talk about it on the internet. I love the Barbie and Disney princesses well past my childhood into my teenage years, and unfortunately, around my teenage years was the time that I started to use the internet, and I was exposed to a lot of the internet discourse at this time, which made me start to feel ashamed to like them. Even now, there's still discourse that prevails in this vein, like the song parodies where they have Ariel singing about how she just changed herself for a man, the articles or YouTube videos from actual qualified therapists talking about whether or not Belle has Stockholm Syndrome, the Facebook memes about the problematic or anti-feminist messages in the movie. And the unfortunate part about this sort of stuff is it did not just stay on the internet. It started to get out into real life, if you want to call it that, where celebrities were talking about how they won't let their children watch Disney movies anymore, or even Disney themselves changing aspects of the original movies in their remakes to avoid getting gotcha'd by people. I used to get really frustrated when I saw this stuff online, or even when people my age, even my friends, regurgitated these same criticisms in real life, because from my perspective, stuff like this was a purposeful misunderstanding of the characters and themes of these movies. It wasn't legitimate criticism, none of it was in good faith. Even though these movies are not without criticism, most of what people were saying wasn't even true. It was a misremembering of the things that actually happened in the movie. And before the Barbie movie that came out, I think that Barbie had an even worse reputation compared to Disney, because Barbie became synonymous with being shallow, or girls that are obsessed with their looks or clothes or makeup and other surface level material things. And I don't think that that's the only reason why the Barbie movies were never given the time of day in comparison to Disney. Obviously, they were direct to DVD instead of being in the theaters, but I do think that that is a huge reason why even now there's not a lot of videos analyzing the movies. Is the animation anywhere close to Disney animation? Of course not, but I think that the storytelling is, and it's sometimes even better than the storytelling in some Disney movies. And at least with the Disney princesses, there has always been pushback to those ideas that I referenced earlier, but with Barbie, I don't think that people ever really cared to look or argue because so few people had seen these movies anyway. You can find YouTube videos about The Little Mermaid in terms of a defense of the whole movie or a breakdown of the songs, but you can't find this for Barbie, and I think it's just because that so few people saw the movie in comparison to Disney. So if somebody wanted to say that something problematic happened in the movie, who's gonna argue with them? It's me. I will argue with them. And so I wanted to do a series where I provide an actual analysis of the Barbie movies to showcase how the characters across the range of the movies are actually very multifaceted and the themes are anything but shallow. Good day, everybody. It is Calxiyn here on Calxiyn Cares Too Much to talk about something that maybe only I care about, but I hope that I can make you guys care too. Thank you for joining me for an extremely thorough analysis of Barbie, the Princess and the Pauper. Thank you to all the patrons, the YouTube members, and the super chatters for making this possible. If you'd like to support me, those are the ways that you can do it too. So Barbie, Princess and the Pauper is based on The Prince and the Pauper by Mark Twain, which is about two identical looking boys who swap places with each other, a prince and a pauper respectively. The story highlights the suffering and injustices happening to the poor and lower class. Since the boys are identical, it also challenges the idea of judging people by appearances, and it points out the absurdity of the idea that the pauper is suddenly treated as a prince because of the clothes he's wearing and vice versa. To me, it says a lot about the shallowness of everyone around these two, that the only thing that makes a prince are their clothes instead of the values that a ruler should presumably have. It also highlights the pressures, anxieties, and responsibilities that the pauper goes through while pretending to be a prince, showcasing everything the prince has on his shoulders as an actual 9-year-old child. This story is a commentary on class, but there's also a sort of B-plot going on about empathy, even on the pauper's side towards the prince. I feel like that these characters being children is really important, because even though the idea of childhood is vastly different throughout different time periods, these are children being robbed of their childhoods. They cannot be normal children because they have to deal with these adult responsibilities and struggles. For the pauper, this is poverty, and for the prince, this is his royal duty. An adult ruler who is blind to the plight of his people wouldn't be as sympathetic, where there is something that is unifying in the oppression of being a kid, in the lack of freedom and autonomy that you have. So you can see that from the very beginning that the Barbie, Princess and the Pauper movie had a lot of responsibility to make sure that they got all this commentary right. You have social status, greed, moral value versus material objects and appearances, as well as this aspect of empathy that they needed to get right. Because a lot of movies with similar themes end up being there is no difference between the rich and the poor, we all have feelings, and that's not exactly the idea that we're going for here. For this story to work, the character in the position of power must acknowledge their position of privilege and the unjust laws within the kingdom that skew towards punishing those in poverty. This movie had a lot of responsibility to make sure that the story was retold as the author intended, in a movie that's meant for little girls. But something that I really appreciate about Barbie Princess and the Pauper is that it never talks down towards its audience. The movie opens by showing the disparity between Erica and Annalise, two children born on the exact same day and look identical, yet Annalise is born a princess while Erica is born a pauper. They are showing the audience how people have no control of what they are born into, whether it's luxury or unfairness. I feel like that this is especially important because there are a lot of parents who teach their kids or just believe in general that being poor is some sort of moral failing, like you did something wrong and for that you deserve to be punished, that people are only homeless or poor or otherwise struggling because they aren't trying hard enough.
Adam Cartwright and Marcy Collard were each homeless for 5 years, most recently in downtown Austin.
We had so many people throw glass bottles from their cars and at our tents and said, y'all white trash, y'all need to get a job, y'all need to get housing, y'all don't need to be out on the streets.
Or some would yell out, go home. It's like, this is technically our home.
But the movie makes sure to make the point that Erica's parents did everything they could within their social class for their daughter, and that they love her just as much as the king and queen love Annalise. And when Erica grows up, her only fault was being born to poor parents. They are planting the seeds that this is unfair and that there are issues in the kingdom that need to be addressed. I will be doing a line-by-line analysis on each song individually, but in the opening song, Free, we see the contrast between Annalise and Erica's lives. I always appreciated the nuanced approach that the movie took with these two. Annalise is lucky to have the life she does, and she knows that, but that also doesn't undermine the pressure or responsibility that she's under. It's not being rich and pampered that makes Annalise's life hard, rather the oppressive element in her story comes from being an adolescent who needs to obey her mother, and has the sole responsibility of saving their kingdom even though she is still a kid. Erica's oppression and lack of freedom is based on class, while I'd argue that Annalise's is based on the same lack of freedom or autonomy children have over their lives as the original, but also gender expectations. Instead of the queen, who is a widow remarrying, it must be her teenage daughter who marries to save the kingdom instead. The movie showcases the unfairness of children having to take up these adult responsibilities, yet not being treated like actual adults. Annalise is mature enough to marry, but not enough to make her own decisions or use her power as a princess to find another solution. We get important exposition here about what Annalise is studying. If you'll permit me to be a little insane for a moment, she is our princess in STEM. Like, she is a nerd, right? And she is presented as immediately intelligent with an interest in science and math, which was not very common at this time for female characters, but it especially was not common for princess characters. Through the lyrics, we see how Annalise and Erica, despite their contrasting situations, both feel very similarly. They yearn for freedom, but both of their lives have already been spoken for. During this song, we also find out that Madame Carp is actually extorting Erica. Erica has paid back more than half of the money, and we can presume that she's around 18, but that doesn't mean she's been working since she's 1 year old, right? Let's generously say that maybe she's been working for 5 years, which is still child labor, but let's just say that she's been working, for 5 years or so. But because of interest, she has to work for another 37 years, and even if Erica is older than we're thinking, that math is just not mathing here. But yet she has to work 40 years, which isn't half of the years. Like, she's paid back more than half, and she's already 18. Then if we times that by 2, she would only have to work for another, she's 18 and she's already paid back half, but she has to work 37 years, which doesn't seem right. It should only be 20 more years, but even that doesn't make sense because, when did Erica's parents die? Okay, she's already paid back half of the money in a very short period of time since she's been working, yet it's still not enough. It's heavily implied that Madame Carp takes advantage of people who are desperate since Erica's parents borrowed money to feed her, and that Madame Carp is stretching this out in order to keep her cheap labor. As we continue through the song, Annalise says,
"You would think that I'm so lucky that I have so many things. I'm realizing that every present comes with strings."
This to me is especially important because Annalise is pointing out that these gifts that she is getting is at the cost of her freedom, and that's what she would rather have. Annalise is in a luxurious prison, but it is a prison nonetheless. She's imparting onto the audience that material possessions are not worth losing something as priceless as freedom and agency. This goes against the idea of Barbie being shallow or superficial, and we are only a few minutes in. When Erica sings, you'll notice that she sings about having little, but still does not let that stop her. She has values that are important to succeed, like determination. You'll also notice that her wants and desires aren't to have a lot of money or fancy dresses or to find a rich husband. She wants to be free of her debt so she can travel the world and sing. A lot of the heroines or princesses are unjustly criticized for their motivations being tied up in men. For example, Ariel from The Little Mermaid. People say she only wanted to go to the human world for a man, but part of your world establishes Ariel's desires before meeting Eric, and people seem to forget that. But Erica doesn't mention any men at all. Continuing on, both girls sing about how they could run from their responsibilities, but ultimately that duty and moral character are more important. Their conscience tells them to stay, showcasing that both of the girls have strong values.
Duty means doing the things your heart may well regret, but I'll never stop believing.
This lyric is really powerful and really resonated with me as I grew up because I feel like that a lot of media made for children, they sometimes push this message of things don't suck as bad as you think you do. Your situation, it's all in your head. Like, it's your attitude that's the problem. Turn the frown upside down, whatever, right? I think the reason why the song is so emotionally powerful is because it goes against that sort of idea. The song acknowledges that yes, there are going to be things that are difficult for you to go through. There are going to be things that you don't want to do, sacrifices you have to make that directly go against what you truly want. But being a responsible person who does not break their promises is important, and we cannot run away. We need to fight to make our lives better. And just because we have responsibilities doesn't mean that we can't keep dreaming and believing that our lives could change and striving for that change. As Erica says, she can never stop my schemes, talking about Madame Carp. Even though Erica is going to stay here, she is not just going to run away from her debt to Madame Carp. She is still going to fight back. She is still going to resist in the ways that she can. And this lyric at the end is most impactful when we talk about how both girls are at the opposite ends of social class, but regardless of their wealth or lack thereof, freedom is important compared to objects and riches.
There's more to living than gloves and gowns and threads and seams. In my dreams, I'll be free.
And I love this line for the double meaning. It's so exciting to me because for Erica, she's talking about making the dresses. For Annalise, she's talking about there being more important things than receiving them or even wearing them. That there are more things that are important to her than just being a pretty princess. So honestly, that was chef's kiss. The decision to make Erica be the one that is making the gowns and is making these materialistic things for the rich people, basically, right? And then Annalise rejecting them, like that was such a big-brained moment for this movie. Now, moving on to Preminger, I have a whole video already scripted out about Preminger, but we will talk about his song in even greater detail in that video. But in terms of just this scene, there's some really nice foreshadowing here with Nick and Knack. Also, knickknacks. They were so insane for this. They're both knickknacks. Anyway, Nick and Knack talking about what they're digging for and the quality something must have to be valuable, and disregarding the geode for that reason, despite the geodes being the key to save the kingdom at the end. When it comes to Preminger himself, he is a great foil for both Annalise and Erica in a very interesting way as the villain. He is stealing all the kingdom's gold that would stop the peasants from starving so he can elevate his own social standing. He is a peasant who is saying, fuck you, got mine, to all the rest of the peasants, because we find out in this song that he is a peasant's son. So he was born a peasant, he's rose up to be the royal advisor, and instead of wanting to make things better for all the people in the social class that he used to be a part of, he wants to rise to the top of the system. He doesn't want to actually change it. He talks about escaping and that when he escapes, he will get all that he desires.
And by marrying the princess, I get all that I desire, like a moat, an ermine coat, and palace views.
Now, some people may look at these lyrics and think that they're really lazy, and like I said, I plan to talk about it in the analysis for this song specifically, but I don't think that they're lazy at all. I think that they're purposefully shallow, not accidentally shallow. A moat to separate him from the lowly peasants, a fancy coat to flaunt his wealth, literally looking down at everyone from the palace. That's what those lines mean to me. And it's not enough to have all the gold in the kingdom, because he could have stolen all this gold and ran away to a new kingdom, became a wealthy lord somewhere else, built his own palace or something. Instead, he wants to be the master in charge of this kingdom. He wants to control everything and everyone. Preminger being a peasant who was clawing his way to the top draws an interesting foil between him, Erica, and Julian. We'll talk about this a little more when Erica pretends to be Annalise, but I'm sure if Preminger was in that situation, if he was Erica pretending to be Annalise, he'd just pretend to be the princess forever to marry Dominic and live in luxury.
Daddy Jill, I'm one of the guys.
On Preminger's part, I think that there's some resentment at the fact that Erica and Julian have opportunities to be ruthless in these cases and are not, or that Julian and Erica win the affections of Dominic and Annalise through just being themselves and not having to think of these cunning, villainous plans. And with both this song and Preminger as a character, greed is associated with villainy. It's clear that Preminger's actions are wrong and should not be aspired to. And it's interesting to see that being shallow and materialistic, a trait that people usually associate with Barbie and quite frankly women in general, if I'm being honest, in a male character. As I previously mentioned, there is some gender-based stuff going on with Annalise, so I think that it's interesting that Preminger is actually all the things that people assume Barbie is. Preminger thinks that Annalise is stupid and objectifies her because she is a princess and a woman, and does not see her as good for anything other than marriage. Back to the palace, we have King Dominic pretending to be a page to see how Annalise acts when King Dominic isn't around. In Preminger's song, he expresses that he wants to use his wealth to force Annalise to fall for him. He thinks that he can buy her love with his wealth and doesn't care if it's real or not as long as she acts how he wants her to. Either she'll genuinely fall in love with him for his money, or she won't actually love him but she'll have no choice but to marry him anyway to save her kingdom. To contrast that with King Dominic, he doesn't want Annalise to act any differently than usual, and there are other times where he's clearly uncomfortable by the fact that this is being treated as a business transaction. Preminger would use wealth to coerce Annalise into marrying him, but Dominic would not. Though Dominic is the king, his ambassador controls him in a very similar way to Annalise's mother, so we can presume that he might be pretty young as well. Moving on to Julian and Annalise's first scene, they establish so many details here that I feel like it's honestly impressive. Firstly, that Annalise has an interest in science since in what is presumably her spare time, she is studying rocks. She could be doing her lessons, but she's so excited about it regardless that it still makes the same point. She also correctly identifies what she's looking at, and I feel like that a lot of the time with this particular trope, it usually doesn't go that way. It usually goes with the male tutor correcting the female character love interest. But in this case, she actually gets it right. The second thing that this scene establishes is that she does not make Julian call her Your Highness, which is subtly delivered to us by her asking why the sudden formality, it's just me. And she does not call Julian by something other than his name. They clearly have a friendship where Annalise sees them as equals. And thirdly, and I think that this is one of the best metaphors in the movie, did you catch how Annalise says that the fool's gold is pretty but not considered valuable to really drive home the idea that appearances mean nothing, especially with whatever's going on in the mines? Earlier in the movie, Nick and Knack ignored the geodes because they aren't shiny, but that same scene foreshadows their true value as we briefly see a stone crack open and something is alluded to being inside, whereas the fool's gold is shiny but worthless. We see Annalise lamenting over her freedom and wondering what Dominic will be like. She values Julian's opinion and that he can speak freely about such things with her. And Julian, despite clearly being in love with Annalise, tries his best to be supportive. He talks about how Dominic can play 3 instruments, which is important for later with Erica since Erica and Dominic both have something in common. It's establishing that Erica likes him for a reason beyond his wealth or his looks. It also tells us a lot about Julian, though, as well. He knows what Annalise values, and so immediately talks about Dominic's skills and interests. Think about other fictional scenarios similar to this one, where the focus is on the man's looks, or his rumored strength in combat, or that sort of thing. Instead, Julian presents the instruments as not a God-given talent or something, but rather a passion, a hobby that Dominic has put time into and clearly cares a lot about, and it's slightly unconventional as well. I think that Julian is trying to say here, you love science, so here's a thing that he loves just as much to show you something more about his personality. And it's not necessarily unconventional for men to be skilled with musical instruments for this historical-ish fictional time period, but you'll notice that the love interests in this movie do really subvert the expectations of the typical male love interest. Julian is this scholar character, whereas Dominic loves music. In modern day terms, in a sea of love interests that are jocks, Julian is a nerd and Dominic is a band geek, and it's extremely refreshing, especially when I think of other things I would have been exposed to around this time, more so in terms of live action stuff. I think that a lot of Disney male princes also subvert tropes like this, but Julian and Dominic always stood out to me for this reason. Before meeting Erica, Annalise sees firsthand how her people are living, even how Julian once did. When she asked Julian about his home, Julian explains that he lived in a single room with his family because they couldn't afford a house, and Annalise had no idea. This is the first time that Annalise has been exposed to the truth about her people's suffering, and I have a feeling that Julian didn't tell her because he sort of has the mindset of it is what it is. That's how I interpret it based on this scene and then later dialogue he has. Telling Annalise would just have her pity him. He doesn't want her to see him in that way, and he doesn't think that anything can change anyway. But during the rest of the scene, we see some witty banter, and Julian also presents the rose, and we see through that his thoughtfulness and how much he knows about her. Whereas Dominic's ambassador in the previous scene has brought Annalise a fancy gift, and many fancy gifts before, Julian gives her something that may not be as expensive, but that she genuinely loves. After that, we move on to Erica singing and trying to give hope to the people around her, but also to herself. And then Madame Carp comes in and steals her money, again reinforcing how she exploits people who are poor and desperate, indebting them for life and trying to reduce their means of escape so she can keep her labor. She snatches away the gold that Erica made on her own time. A tiny detail that I love here and that some people, even people like me who really love this movie, may have missed is that when Annalise asks about the song, Erica says that her mom taught it to her. Her parents may not have had any money, but this song is one of her only possessions, and arguably a priceless one. Her parents gave her this song of hope, this message of freedom they wanted her to remember. When Annalise and Erica meet, similar to when Annalise told Julian not to use her title, Annalise tells Erica to call her by her name and does not enforce the princess title here at all. In I Am a Girl Like You, Erica and Annalise are both able to recognize each other's struggles regardless of their difference in status, while reinforcing that things are hard for Erica in a way that's different from Annalise. Instead of being like, well, rich people have problems too, you know, and leaving it at that, they are able to acknowledge Annalise's privilege within the song. Annalise acknowledges the differences between them, like how Annalise always has a hot meal, but Annalise's oppression is based within her gender and parental control, and that's outside of her privileges as the princess. Erica does not resent Annalise for being born into this privilege, and Annalise is hesitant to talk about her life because she knows how bad things are for Erica. Erica is able to realize, though, that Annalise's freedom is being taken away because she is being forced to marry. And we also have a lyric in here about Annalise wishing that she could read her science books all day. Remember, this movie was still made at a time where it was still a little taboo for girls to be into science and math, and so even though it's not the boxing or the sword fighting, I think that they're trying to make a point that Annalise does things that are not princess-like. And I feel like if she were a prince, things would be different. It's ultimately Annalise's knowledge that allows her to save their kingdom, and my interpretation is that a prince would have the ability to seek out solutions, which is currently Preminger's job, whereas Annalise is not encouraged to do so. If Annalise were a boy, would the queen let Annalise take charge over Preminger? I've always thought that, yeah, I think the queen would if Annalise were a prince. Earlier in the movie, the queen says that marrying Dominic is the only way to save their people and that it is Annalise's duty. It's subtle, but I think that the queen really thinks that all Annalise can do, all she's good for, is marriage, which is proven wrong by the end. So with this in mind, Erica and Annalise both have solidarity together as women to me. Erica could have been like, what are you complaining about? You're a princess, but she's able to recognize that even within this position of privilege, Annalise is still trapped like she is. Erica makes multiple references to Madame Carp's being like a prison. She calls it a penitentiary in this song, and then in Free she calls it a debtor's prison. So they're reminding us yet again how poorly Erica is being treated and that it is outside the norm. It's not just that Erica has to work, it's that the workplace is comparable to prison. And as I said with Annalise, she is in a luxurious prison, but a prison nonetheless. Neither of them have any freedom or control over their own lives. And now we have a nice contrast between Preminger and Madame Carp versus our heroes. They are the opposites to Erica and Annalise in this way, both of them exploiting other people and mistreating them for personal gain. The rest of the song highlights how they understand each other despite the differences in their situation. Because they are responsible people who care about doing what's right. They carry through, they both have dreams of things being better. And this song has a really fantastic message about what is really important. Strength of heart, dreaming of something more, and fulfilling their respective responsibilities. After this, Annalise promises to have Erica sing at the palace. She is using her position of privilege to give Erica an opportunity to get out. It's not out of pity, and Annalise doesn't flaunt this. There's no point made of, oh, Annalise is so good-hearted, look at how good of a person she is. She earnestly wants to do it and wants to do something within her power to help Erica achieve her dreams, because she would want someone to do the same for her. Because Annalise knows how it feels to yearn for freedom and that freedom be just out of reach, that it could almost be within reach if somebody just did something to help, she wants to help Erica have what she cannot. When it comes to Annalise getting kidnapped, this isn't really a damsel in distress situation for me. She gets kidnapped out of concern for the cat, and that's a very interesting detail because she could have called a servant to investigate. Later on, we do know that there's a royal dog catcher, so I'm sure that she could have just called anyone for this, but instead she goes off on her own. This highlights how Annalise is caring, but also her hands-on nature. To me, the cat is the damsel. Annalise is just the rescuer who ends up getting caught. I know I haven't talked a lot about the animals in this movie, but I feel like they were just kind of there as runtime padding. Like, there are some nice themes going on with Seraphina, Wolfie, Midas, like, because Midas seems, I don't know, to want to be with Seraphina or something, even though she's a cat. Like, there's kind of a weird romantic implication, but then Seraphina falls for Wolfie instead of Midas, and that's a part of the movie. But this part of the movie's more the part that's for literal children, in my opinion, like the talking animals. And so even though there is some stuff, like they do thematically parallel Annalise and Erica in an interesting way, I haven't really gone into it too much because ultimately that's the part that's for kids. During the next morning at breakfast, I think it's very telling how the queen just believes this letter without question. While Julian immediately knows that something is wrong, it shows that the queen doesn't really know her daughter that well at all. Preminger takes a cheap shot at Julian and calls him a schoolboy, and I think that this goes back to the Preminger-Julian contrast I talked about earlier. It's not only that Preminger is belittling Julian for his position in the staff, for being Annalise's tutor, but it's also, you are just her tutor. Why do you presume that you could help me look for her? Preminger clearly doesn't think too highly of Booksmart, since to him, wealth is the ultimate might, but it's Julian and Annalise's intelligence that allows them to beat Preminger in the end. Preminger signing Annalise's letter with lilac was a rookie mistake that Julian caught, and it shows the difference between Preminger and Julian. Preminger wants to possess Annalise, but Julian actually knows her. Julian goes to get Erica's help, and again, we have the subversion of the usual male lead stereotype. He's not this tough guy who plans to use his physical strength to go find Annalise and break down doors and that sort of thing. He is instead calm and intelligent, planning to catch Preminger in a trap. In a lie. This is more in line with the underdog protagonists in fairy tales who use their cunning to succeed as opposed to their physical strength or might or status. When it comes to Erica pretending to be Annalise, Erica agrees to do this for Annalise because Annalise was going to help her within her means as the princess to invite her to the palace, so similarly, Erica will help Annalise within her means. Erica's a singer, she's not explicitly an actress, but I feel like for this, again, pseudo-historical princessy time period, like, she's not Taylor Swift going on the world tour or something. Like, I feel like that Erica is in the same vein as an opera singer, in my opinion. I feel like at this time, if you were a singer, you were an actor also in some capacity, even if it was sort of more street theater and not that you're in an actual play, but there was a theatrical element to your performance as opposed to just singing the song you wrote to a bunch of people, right? So I'd argue, given our musical theater context and everything, she's using her skills as a performer, as a little bit of an actress, just like how Annalise was going to use her privilege as the princess. Now, when it comes to be a princess, what I really appreciate about this song is that it has a realistic message. It's highlighting the good, the bad, and the neutral. The good parts, like the 1,000 pairs of shoes. I think at one point Julian says you never have to make your bed, so there's the you never have to do the chores angle. But these things are not necessarily a choice, they're just the fact of the matter. We see what happens in other times when Annalise tries to take matters into her own hands, right? So it's not necessarily her choice, it's just that this is a fact of her own life. So I'd put those in good or neutral. Some people may see that as a plus. I also see that is just the reality. You will have people waiting on you. And Annalise doesn't really seem to like that throughout the movie. Like, she tries to take matters into her own hands a lot. But we also hear about the downsides too, like not being able to show a thing you feel inside, having to always look your best, having to sit for hours to be painted and never move. There's a lot of overlap between the things that Julian is singing about, but also the pressures that women are under. But something really interesting about Julian's lyrics is he always brings it back to intelligence. To be a princess is to never be confused. Speak and be clever, never at a loss for words, to always use your head, to be prepared for every possibility that royal life will bring, to keep a grip and never crack, stiff upper lip, etc. Now that last one is a bit more of a double-edged sword, like the pressure of needing to always maintain composure, but I also think that keeping a grip and staying cool under pressure is a valuable skill as well. So you can see how even though Julian is mentioning all these other things, the most important things are the cleverness, is the intelligence. So even though Julian may mention these other things, he makes sure to reinforce to Erica that it's not about those other things. The most important thing is for you to use your brain. So throughout this song, Julian is driving home that in order for Erica to be successful, she must be as intelligent as Annalise. It's not enough to look the part or to follow all these manners and rules. It's mimicking Annalise's intelligence that is important. When it comes to Julian singing about Annalise, he does have lyrics that compare her to a rose, and he does sing about her beauty, but it's not simply that she is beautiful. He doesn't talk about her long golden hair or anything like that. It's that she's beautiful to him because of how she carries herself. Her eyes are beautiful because of how they carry her joy and cheerfulness. His spirits rise when she walks in the room. So her beauty is more about her demeanor. There's also nothing wrong with a character commenting on someone else's appearance as long as it's not the only thing that that character likes about them. But to me, it was clear that this wasn't just about her looks. It's that she is more beautiful because of her cheerful personality, because of how her enthusiasm is infectious, and no matter how he's feeling, he always feels better when she is there. And then we have a nice little eyes are the window to the soul type thing as well, and I think that's why they picked eyes as opposed to any other physical attribute. In terms of presenting Erica, we again have this frustrating realization as an audience member that the queen really knows nothing about her own daughter. Annalise does not talk like this. Like, Erica is doing a very poor mimicry of, "Mother, I'm so sorry, I should not have run away." She's not using any contractions in order to sound more noble or more refined, but Annalise does not talk like this, and no one notices. There's also something interesting about Dominic here. The ambassador thinks that they should cancel the wedding, but Dominic disagrees. My interpretation is that he's actually relieved that Annalise is nervous about marrying him and that she's not just after him for his money, because if it was all about that, she would have no problem. But the fact that they think that she ran away from home because of nerves shows that she's a normal person who has normal anxieties just like he does. And then in this scene, Julian again has another showcase of his intelligence with his plant identification, correctly identifying the part of the kingdom that Preminger must be going to based on the plants that grow there. Back to Annalise being locked in the cabin, Annalise saves herself here. She outsmarts both Nick and Knack, which, albeit they are stupid, but that reflects more on Preminger than Annalise. Preminger thinks that Annalise is helpless and dumb, and so he entrusts the responsibility of guarding her to his two incompetent henchmen. Julian comes to save her, but he ends up getting kidnapped himself, where she gets all the way to the castle by herself. She is not a damsel in distress waiting for anybody to save her. When Annalise is turned away by the castle guards, she goes to Madame Carp's for help, thinking she'll get help from Erica, and she stands up for Bertie when Madame Carp berates her. And Annalise also gets to experience through this firsthand what Erica's life is like. Annalise carries herself as the princess, and remember, Annalise still looks like the princess. They aren't exactly identical in this version of the story. Her hair isn't changed to brown or anything by magic, she still looks like herself. But Madame Carp cannot see past her appearance looking similar to Erica. Now, Madame Carp says that they're not leaving until every dress is finished, and I always wondered, was this for food? For the bathroom? It's nighttime, so is it to sleep? Like, they're not allowed to sleep until they're done? And whatever it's implying, it's super fucked up. But Annalise has another brilliant plan, sending out Serafina with the clothing tag. It's just too bad that Preminger found it. But I love going through this movie and just realizing again, as an adult, how capable and proactive that the antagonists are. The idea that princesses always have to get rescued by a prince is nowhere to be found here. And the movie doesn't make it a big thing either. I guess it just depends on how it's done. Like, I think Shrek is a good example of criticizing common tropes, for instance, but something I can't stand is when movies and shows do this like wink wink to the audience during these moments. Like, the writers couldn't resist the urge to pat themselves on the back and be like, look, we made a woman a regular person, look at us, oh my god, and it undermines the point, and that sort of thing just makes it feel like a joke. But this movie treats Annalise and Erica saving themselves completely seriously without any of that. There's also a later scene with Annalise still being here where she's trying to help Birdie make the dresses even though she's terrible at it, again, highlighting her kindness. She won't let Birdie do it alone. Back to Erica, we see her offering food to the servant, which I always thought was a really sweet moment. Like, she has this life with people waiting on her. She has all of this abundance, but instead, she shares. She doesn't treat them any differently. Now, again, I've sort of been ignoring the animal B-plot just because I don't have a lot to say about it outside of what I already mentioned, but that being said, I think that The Cat's Meow is genuinely a beautiful song. It's all about not putting yourself into a box or feeling like you need to change yourself to please other people. This song is for anyone that feels different in some way, like a barking cat, but I always felt like it was a bit of a queer allegory too. And it plays into that gender expectation thing as well, like cats aren't supposed to bark. You can apply that to women aren't supposed to do this, or men aren't supposed to do that. And this song always makes me tear up a little bit. It always rejuvenates my spirits if I'm feeling down, and this is another amazing message and a very heartfelt song rivaling something, in my opinion, just like Disney, and so many people have no idea about it. And during this song, we again have You Don't Need the Bows or Tiaras, reinforcing this idea that Erica doesn't think these sort of materialistic things are important. We should love ourselves for how we are and love each other for how they are as well. Erica also quotes Shakespeare during this song, which shows her theatrical side, but also her intelligence. As I said, I want to do individual videos about all of the songs, but the lyrics are very clever, and it doesn't read as the lyricist being clever. Sometimes you get these situations where you can see that the word choices and things like that that are used are more the lyricist than the character, but this feels very in character for Erica to be so quick-witted and poetic. And even though she's trying to make Wolfie feel better, I think that given her circumstances, Julian has apparently gone missing and she's freaking out, worried about how she's going to do this without him. I think that she's also singing to make herself feel better too, that she does not need a tiara to be worthy of acceptance and love. She's grounding herself to make sure she doesn't get lost in the sauce, so to speak. And this is what Dominic starts to fall for. Remember, he's seen the princess already, but this is the first time that I think he's really started to like her. Because firstly, Erica loves music, and this is music within the world, so to speak. So like, she just wrote her own song right now that other people around her can hear. It's not just a musical theater song where it's a soliloquy to the audience and only the audience can hear, but it's in-universe music that Dominic really appreciates. But also, it's not just the fact that she's a singer and musically inclined, but that Erica, who he thinks is Annalise, has strong values based on the lyrics of her song. He can see that she is a genuine, earnest person. Similar to Annalise, Dominic tells disguised Erica to call him Dominic, showing that he's not really one for titles either. Dominic explains that he wanted to get to know her and showcases how he also detests the ceremony and formalities of these things, which is why he came here in disguise. As I mentioned before, it's not just the content in Erica's song that it was about being honest and true to yourself, but it's also that Dominic is an established lover of music, and this creates a genuine connection between him and Erica because they can both make music together, which I thought was really sweet. And their duet is such a beautiful song. I love the symbolism with he picks a blue rose for her, the only blue rose in a sea of pink roses, and I just think that it's fantastic. It's almost a montage as well. Like, they start out as actually singing together, but then it's implied that they've been talking for a long time, getting to know each other all day until the sun is setting. It's funny that when Preminger comes to get Annalise, he finally acknowledges that she was clever and has this line.
Very clever, finding a double to fool the queen, but not quite clever enough. Checkmate. I win.
But he still thinks that he's smarter and believes Annalise to be underestimating him just like a royal. Though Preminger never sits down and explains his backstory, it's clear to me that he has a lot of animosity toward people looking down on him for being a peasant, and he thinks that Annalise and the Queen are like that too. But when Annalise and Julian get trapped in the mine, they don't just sit around and cry. They're fighting the entire way, and Annalise says that they have to find a way to get out and stop Preminger. She sparks the will to keep fighting. When Annalise gets to Julian, I feel like Julian has already given up. When Erica is exposed, we have the Queen with an ironic proclamation of,
"Are you telling me I don't know my own daughter?"
and this always has me screaming no matter how many times I watch the movie, because no, she doesn't. And Preminger has some top-tier malicious projection in this scene. I should note that this explanation that he gives does not make any sense. He's saying that Erica and Julian murdered Annalise to take over the kingdom, but Annalise loves Julian, and the Queen knows this because at the beginning of the movie, Annalise is looking longingly at Julian over the balcony. She tells her mother that she wishes that she could marry who she chooses, implying that it's Julian who she chooses. And the Queen has dialogue saying she's sorry, but that Annalise has to marry Dominic. If Julian wanted to take over the kingdom, they didn't need Erica at all. Annalise could have just married Dominic, and then they could have killed Dominic, and then Julian could have married Annalise instead. Erica is not even relevant to this equation. It would have been smarter if they let the marriage happen, have Annalise get Dominic's money, and then Julian to marry Annalise after she has already been widowed. But because Julian and Erica are peasants while Preminger is the royal advisor, they are judged more harshly. They are presumed to be guilty, like the peasants in the original novel. Despite Julian being Annalise's tutor for a number of years, we can assume, they are reduced to their social standing, their appearances, if you will, instead of their character. The only one who realizes that it doesn't make any sense is Dominic, which says a lot about the Queen. Dominic knows Erica, unlike the Queen not knowing anything about Annalise, her own daughter, or Julian, who is her daughter's best friend. Annalise says that Julian is her best friend. So the Queen knows nothing about them, but Dominic knows more about these two people that he just met. Now, when Preminger convinces the Queen to marry him, you may think that there's a bit of a plot hole here. Like, why didn't Preminger just do this in the first place? And I think that it's very telling about Preminger's character. Why, though? There is no way that this Queen is gonna have children with him. Like, they are both really old. And so by murdering Annalise, Preminger would rather doom the entire bloodline than risk the possibility of him marrying the Queen and then Annalise marrying someone else. The reason why he went for Annalise is because of, I'm assuming, Annalise's capability to still have children, and also that would keep him in the position of power. Whereas even if he married the Queen, Annalise could marry someone else and the power would eventually go to that person. He's only using this plan as a last resort. He would rather burn this bridge with him and everyone else on it to get what he wants just for a shorter period of time, which is insane. He wants to live in luxury for the rest of his life and doesn't care what comes after. And the line about wanting something that you never even use is absolutely savage. It's a great reprise of the villain song from before. But to me, it was always super telling about Preminger's character that instead of wanting to marry the Queen that's a widow, he would want to marry Annalise, and that this is just second place. Like, this is just the consolation. Like, this is the best he can do at the moment with Annalise being murdered. The Queen was never his first choice, and that's the reason why, because he wanted to possess Annalise in a way that he can't really possess the Queen, because the Queen cannot be objectified in the same way that Annalise can. Back to the mines, Julian and Annalise have such good chemistry, and I always found this confession scene just so moving and so well written, because we've known from the beginning of the movie that Julian is from a poor family, but he's kind of dodged his feelings a couple times up until now, but now we find out why Julian has stood aside this entire time despite his clear feelings for Annalise. It's because he feels inadequate compared to Dominic. But Annalise insists that this doesn't matter, that she loves him because of his intelligence, that their love is on the foundation of their friendship, that she and Julian are best friends.
I think you're like this.
A rock?
Unassuming on the outside, but a treasure within.
We'll get out of here somehow. I promise.
And I always always love this line. I thought this entire scene was so smart when Annalise says that you're like this, unassuming on the outside, but a treasure within, and Julian's just like a rock. Like, it's just such good writing because it has that banter between them, but then something heartfelt and serious and emotional and just like one of the best like love confessions, like just so good. And this draws an even greater contrast between Julian and Preminger. Annalise loves Julian for all the reasons that Preminger demeans him, calling him a schoolboy, saying he should go back to his books. It just reinforces that message that it's not the wealth that's important, that it's true love that matters, a love that's built on the foundation of their friendship, and that Annalise does not see him as lesser for being a tutor. That's part of the reason why she loves him so much. When they escape, it's Annalise that has the idea of the water and the barrel, and she tells Julian to help her. And this again showcases to me Annalise's independence without her girl bossing her own rescue without needing anyone's help at all. I personally hate how people treat independence as not needing anybody ever for anything, because that's not a healthy attitude. Human beings need community and need togetherness. But a lot of movies have instilled that recently, and I really don't like it. Like, this movie is able to show that Erica and Annalise are independent in terms of having their own ideas and their own strategies to save themselves, but still have the power of friendship, and the bonds that they've made along the way also help. A lot of movies overcorrect by making the men the damsels in distress in an attempt to empower the women, which is context dependent, but like I said, I usually find that I don't really like that, and I'm glad that this movie doesn't do it. We don't need the female characters to save the helpless male characters or the men to save the helpless women, etc. Everybody has their own strengths, and they all use those strengths to succeed together. Dominic uses his skill of acting and disguises. Erica uses her singing and her lockpicking skills to get out of here. Annalise and Julian use their science, and notably, again, all of these are not really physical strength, which subverts the leading man trope as well. So even though I really appreciate how the movie empowers the female characters in this way, I also really like what it does with the male characters too, because it's something different that I feel like is very fresh and very necessary. And all of them help to take down Preminger equally. After Preminger's defeated, I like that the movie admits that the queen was not really the greatest. Like, Preminger played her for a fool, but also she acknowledges that part of this is on her, and I never realized this, because if you guys don't know, I'm remaking this video. I made it on my main channel, and now I'm remaking it for my side channel, because this is all I'm gonna do on this channel now. So I thought it was time. It's been a couple of years, and this is something I never really noticed until this revision. Like in The Little Mermaid with King Triton and Ariel, there's this idea that they are both at fault. Ariel for making the deal with Ursula, and then Triton for how he's reacted to basically everything up until this point, right? But in this movie, the apology is just by the parent, which makes it very different and very necessary. The parents admitting that they're wrong and the child sharing no blame in that is something that hardly ever happens. The movie never says this outright, but I always wondered or got the impression that when Annalise's father died, the queen felt unprepared or unfit to rule, and so that's why she left a lot of things to Preminger. She let someone else handle things because she was too scared to come into her own and be that strong role model that Annalise needed her to be. But now the queen is able to see that her daughter is stronger than she knew, and her daughter was able to flourish into the role in a way that the queen could not. Now, the queen seems a little surprised when Annalise mentions Julian, but she also sees Annalise gazing longingly at Julian earlier, so I'm not entirely sure what happened here. I interpret this in two ways. Rather than being surprised that it's new information, she's more surprised that Annalise is being forward with her, the fact that she's suggesting it at all, because the kingdom is still bankrupt, right? Earlier, I mentioned how the queen should know better of Julian because she understands Annalise's relationship with Julian. She sees Annalise again gazing longingly out the window. So, like, there's two interpretations. She didn't know, or she's more surprised that the unspoken taboo is being back on the table. Even with Preminger exposed, they're no better off than when they started. She would still have to marry Dominic unless she has a solution, and she does. And that's when she brings up the discovery of the mine. And as I mentioned, it's Annalise's discovery that allows their kingdom to be saved. And this circles back to the idea that if Annalise had been allowed to do these things that are taboo for a princess, they would have never been in this situation. The ending validates that Annalise was always more than just a princess who marries a prince. Her intelligence is validated through this ending, and that she is a ruler who could take action because she is so educated, because of the things that she was passionate about, and the things that people like Preminger clearly didn't put a lot of stock in or didn't really respect. And Erica has a truly fabulous ending. And this was the first time I've seen this done, but I can still count now, as an adult, how many times I've seen it since in a similar genre. Erica loves Dominic, but she doesn't just put aside her own ambitions to marry him. She turns down Dominic for her dreams and her career as a singer and returns to him only when she's ready. Erica does not give up her dreams for a man, and Dominic does not guilt Erica for making this decision. He says he'll take his chances, and I feel like this again draws a contrast between Dominic and Preminger. Whereas Preminger wants to possess Annalise, Dominic made it clear that Erica has no obligation to him. The ring is a gift with no strings attached, and this is in direct contrast to Erica saying that every present comes with strings. Annalise thought that at the beginning, but things don't have to be this way. A gift can just be a gift. She can find him later in life or not. And this is one of the most important lessons of the movie, in my opinion, because they really could have just had Erica marry him. You know, like, they didn't need to do all this. They could have been like, you'll sing at the palace as a princess in front of thousands of subjects. They could have done it like that. But instead, Erica is able to go on her own journey, completely independent from this new life of riches or wealth, or with Dominic funding it or anything like that. She goes off on her own, and I just love that, and I respect that so much about this movie. And I love how they describe that sometimes being free means choosing not to go, but to stay, because how true is that? It just gives me goosebumps to think about. Erica has been confined for her entire life. She travels the world, has a fulfilling career, and now she gets to choose to stay somewhere instead of being forced to. She's not coming back just because of Dominic, but because she misses her friends. And I think that's so sweet. Like, they really became her found family because we know her parents are dead. And after seeing the world and singing, like, there's nowhere else she would rather be than with the people that love her. And I just think that's so nice. Something else I really love about this movie is how strong Annalise and Erica's friendship is. I know that they don't spend a lot of time together, but I sort of see I Am a Girl Like You as a love at first sight, but with friendship. Like, they just felt this immediate kinship and this immediate bond, like when you really click with someone. And so even though they're separate for most of the movie, it doesn't seem unbelievable for them to be this close, really. It seems completely in character that they would be like this. And I love how they have their wedding together. They're celebrating their life together. As the song says, they are friends forevermore. And I love that it's a reprise of Erica's Song of Hope from when they were singing together, like in the street, and coming back to this and with the whole ensemble. It's just so beautiful. It's just amazing. It's giving that, like, the end of The Little Mermaid when they all have the part of your world reprise situation. And I love the mention of gifts because it's talking about those unique passions and skills and that stuff that I mentioned in the video. And I don't think that it's supposed to be God-given talents. I never felt like they were trying to say that the science or Erica's singing or anything else in the movie when it comes to the characters is something that's, like, given to you. I hate when people use talents for certain things, like singing, obviously, because I went to musical theater school. I can tell you that you may be inclined for a certain way, but, like, singing is not my talent. Singing is something that I've spent 10 years building and, like, as an actual skill. It's something that needs practice. There are so few people that have a talent. So what I really love is that, to me, the movie is like, yeah, this is a gift. Like, it does mention gift in the same way that some people may use talent, but to me, the gift was never about the thing. The gift was never that Erica could sing, but it was the will to continue to sing despite her circumstances, and that goes for every character. And the message of the song in general is just so beautiful. You may be different, you may be passionate about things that aren't conventional, but you will find your place among the people that love you. And usually I don't like the usage of destiny and that sort of thing, like, oh, this is written in your heart. I don't like written in the stars or fate or anything like that, because it feels like sometimes that it takes agency away from the characters, but I actually really like how it's used here because it's living your dream that makes you find your destiny. It's not that your destiny is predetermined. It's that you can only be who you are destined to be if you fight for it, if you try. And this is jumping back to the beginning of the song, and I don't want to get too much into it because, again, I want to do its own lyric analysis, but the fact that Erica says you're always free to begin again, you're always free to believe, and how that contrasts the fact that they wish that they were free at the beginning of the movie, and now they are always free. They're always free to find that place, but then they found it. They both found the place where they belong. And I love how Annalise says love is like a melody because it's the melody that the parents gave Erica. Like, it was the song of their love. It's just so good. All the lyrics are just so good in this one. Because now I've started to get really unhinged and rambly. We're done with this video. This has been my extremely thorough analysis on the Barbie Princess and the Pauper and why they deserve so much better. Annalise and Erica are such empowering role models, and this movie is so moving. It has so many nuanced messages, and I haven't seen it acknowledged enough. I have seen maybe like 2 video essays about this movie, but I've never seen any songs, like just about the songs or anything like that. So I really want to do all of the songs independently. I didn't want to do it here because I knew it would be long, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on everything that I've talked about in this video. Let me know what movies you want me to cover next. Again, thank you to the patrons. Thank you to everyone that supports the channel and supports me being able to make videos like this. This has been Calxiyn caring way too much, but I hope that now you care too, and I will see you next time. Bye!